Welcome to Traveler's Tales. I am your host, Greg Alonzo. In part 2 of Bread and Circuses, the Roman passion for chariot racing, we will be taking a look at your questions and comments. However, before we begin, just a reminder that we post new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Moving right along, our first comment is from my friend Stavros. He appreciates that I acknowledge that it was not the Romans, but the Greeks who were the first to appreciate chariot racing. My friend Stavros is always quick to argue that all things of value have a connection to Greece. Stavros, in this case, you are actually correct. Taking a look now, Cynthia is our second question, and she asks, since chariot racing was so dangerous, what prompted young men to become charioteers? Cynthia, sometimes they were slaves and had no choice. Let's not forget that a successful racer brought in millions for his faction. He could then buy his freedom and have a stake to start a new life for himself. Our next question, Chuck wants to know, by streamlining the chariot, did they really pick up that much more speed? In a word, yes. Chuck, you have to remember that chariots were originally battle vehicles. They were the tanks of their day. Chariots also carried 2 or 3 people and were equipped with various weaponry. While racing chariots were stripped down to the bare essentials, as I previously mentioned, the charioteer had to balance himself in what was essentially a basket, and he was moving at high speed. Our next comment is from Rachel. She goes on to say that she was surprised to learn of all the pomp and circumstance that was involved with chariot racing. Well, Rachel, keep in mind that originally racing was associated with funerals. If you recall that in the Iliad, Homer writes of the race to honor the death of Patroclus. As racing began to be popular with the Romans, it was celebrated in conjunction with various religious festivities. Our next question, Taylor wants to know why only Berber horses were prized by the Romans for racing. Taylor, barbs are a bit smaller and compact in size when compared to other established breeds. Since they are desert horses, they are rugged, tough, and can run all day. They not only have a larger heart, barbs have the heart to win. Our next question is from Vlad. He wants to know what happened to Rome's Circus Maximus. Sadly, due to constant warfare and the pillaging of materials for other projects, the great circus was left in rubble. Let's see, our next question comes from Drew. He wants to know how similar were the actual chariot races to the fabled race in the 1959 classic movie Ben-Hur. Well, Drew, the chariots were much different. In the film, they were more representative of a war chariot. I do believe that the action was indicative of the races of the era. Lastly, the circus was located in the port city of Caesarea, not Jerusalem. We have a comment from Ricardo. He goes on to say that he was surprised by the size of the Circus Maximus and the speeds by which the charioteers drove their teams. Ricardo, I totally agree with you. What surprised me even more was the charioteer had no control over the outside horses, what the Romans wouldn't do for an extra thrill. Our next question is from Roxanne. She wants to know just how expensive was it to own a team? That's a good question. It would be comparable to owning one of today's sports teams. Stop and think for a moment. The horses alone had to be fed and cared for. This required grooms, farriers, trainers, and people to exercise the horses. With regard to the driver, he required food, lodging, training, an assortment of uniforms. In fact, everyone affiliated with the faction was required to dress accordingly. Let's also not forget the equipment. All chariots and all other accoutrements were custom made. So definitely an expensive sport all around indeed. We have time for one more question. Let's take a look at a comment from Lawrence. He goes on to say that chariot racing was the spectacle of the day, and the Circus Maximus was a triumphant display of Roman architecture. Lawrence, I couldn't have said it better myself. The Romans knew how to keep the people happy. They did this not only through bread and circuses, they instilled a sense of pride in being a Roman, the noble men of the Tiber. This ends part 2 of Bread and Circuses, the Roman passion for chariot racing. Please like and subscribe to our channel. For your convenience, we have listed our email address and Instagram information. We are always eager to hear from you, our viewers. Don't forget to click on the little bell icon to be notified each time we post new videos. Thank you for joining us in this edition of Traveler's Tales. As a reminder, we post new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Traveler's Tales will return with the wines of antiquity. Caratisto.